All right, everyone. Over the last few days, we've gotten reliable new polling, including the Des Moines Register, which is the big one there from Iowa. We still have very little from the other states. I'm sitting there, I'm like, in New Hampshire, okay, we know Sanders is ahead, although not by a huge margin, only by a few points in some of the polls there, ahead of either Biden or Warren, depending on who you ask. And then there's some non-aggregated polls that are all over the place. There's a reason they're not aggregated. We've got almost nothing from Nevada or South Carolina. I'm beginning to wonder if the pollsters just don't like Biden because he's significantly underperforming in Iowa, and New Hampshire's so solidly Bernie mode that, like, South Carolina and Nevada are the big ones for him. The problem for Biden is, of course, if he doesn't make it in Iowa and then loses in New Hampshire, he could end up dropping the ball at that point. It could become basically a Warren shoe-in situation because he gets fucked in South Carolina and Nevada. I don't think that's likely. But he might be a little bit worried because two of these three recent polls show Warren ahead. One only by a small margin, but the only poll showing him ahead only has him ahead by, I think, 2 points. And it's not even the most reliable or recent of the three polls. So you've got a situation where Joe Biden is now arguably behind in Iowa. If you aggregate the number, Warren is ahead. It's only three polls that have been aggregated there. I'd like to see 5 or 6, but it's certainly not good news for him. That being said, keep in mind 2016 and most elections, and remember this: Trump lost in Iowa. It wasn't even that close. He lost by a fairly significant margin to Ted Cruz at the time. I actually didn't expect that to happen. The polling looked up for him. It looked like he was on the upswing, but at the last minute, Ted Cruz won it. People pointed out, generally speaking, the candidates that win Iowa don't go on to be nominated. It'd be very funny if that proves to be the case again, as it usually is in the Democratic primaries here, where Joe Biden ends up coming in just second in Iowa. I mean, delegate-wise, it still puts him in a fine position, but then goes on to maybe beat Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire. The thing for Bernie is Sanders has been on a downslide. If it continues, I would expect Biden to grab New Hampshire. Warren, however, also does, technically speaking, have a bit of an advantage. That is, if it looks like Bernie Sanders is giving a wink and a nod to people to vote for Warren, or if he drops out and endorses Warren, or the fact that Warren is from Massachusetts, which is, relatively close to New Hampshire, having that maybe home region advantage where she can stump from home more easily. She could tip it and she could win New Hampshire as well. You could see Warren sweep the first 4 states, despite the fact that she's not even the national frontrunner. By the way, if this happens, it'll alienate a lot of Democrats and fuck the party real hard. The Democrats don't really have a good way out. Option number 1, Biden manages to become nominee. Well, Joe Biden's not going to kick it in the general election. It's just not going to work. His eyes bleed, he has aneurysms, he's got dementia, he slurs his words, he fucking says crazy shit, he gets antagonized easily. You're going to take an easily antagonized, grumpy old man and put him up in front of Donald Trump? Great idea. Going to be a wonderful time. There's option 1. There's your front runner. Option 2 is Elizabeth Warren. You've got Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren, if she gets in there, the national front runner is Biden by a fairly large margin. That could still be the case as the primaries proceed. Elizabeth Warren, though, well, she has her own core of popularity, arguably almost as large as Biden's in some cases, would I think lag behind in a lot of the competitive states. I think that she could end up doing very poorly in the Rust Belt, doing very poor in the Mid-Atlantic, maybe parts of the Southwest. I can see New Mexico potentially being in play. It's a fairly blue state by almost double digits in most elections here, and yet I think it could move in the other direction because of the Native American voters there. Elizabeth Warren is not popular among the group of people that she grifted off of for a half a century. Oh yeah, I'm pure-blooded Cherokee, she said when she was going for her college entrance exams. I'm full-blooded Native American for everything except when I'm talking to my waspish friends in my NIMBY-gated community. That's basically Elizabeth Warren. That's going to rub people the wrong way. And by the way, her used car salesman shtick is straight out of Mitt Romneydom. Her ability to speak and actually be persuasive is about the same as Mitt Romney's, like a 6 out of 10 at best. Trump has her completely caged in that situation. Third choice. Let's say that Bernie Sanders does well enough in Iowa to grab New Hampshire, and because Biden starts to falter or dies or something, Elizabeth Warren can't gain any further traction, and it's Bernie out of nowhere. He manages to replicate his 2016 successes in some of the remaining caucus states or something. Let's say Bernie Sanders becomes your nominee. You've got a socialist running for office. It's not going to work. the average swing voter will vote heavily again. The turnout will be very high, unfortunately, among Republicans, among the more right-leaning independent voting bloc. Some millions of people that are like, well, lean Republican, but I don't know, I've got a sniffle, and maybe I'll stay home. No, they won't stay home. They'll go vote. You don't even have to vote for Trump, you just have to vote against Bernie at that point. Kamala Harris rounding out the top 4. Who cares about Kamala Harris? She's not viable anymore. She's probably not even in the top 3 for any of the first 4 states. She's losing money. She doesn't do well at debates when challenged at all, and now that people know that, they have every reason to attack her. She's probably going to get knocked out before Super Tuesday. And then Buttigieg, I think he's viable. I think he'd do well, but the problem is, no matter how good he is at the debates, he's still not even 40 years old, and he doesn't have the name recognition. So Warren, who didn't do nearly as well as him, isn't nearly as persuasive or heavy-hitting as him, still ends up eking out a win. He gains basically nothing from the debate, just enough to sort of equal Kamala Harris. Looking at these first 4 states, though, I wish we had more polling from the other 3, because right now the only stuff we've got is from Iowa. All eyes on Des Moines, I suppose, where Biden is underperforming, fairly decently. It'd be funny if Warren wins that, Sanders gets New Hampshire. Biden's like, well, I can at least grab up South Carolina, like the Democrats are going to be able to get that in the general election. Then I guess you have to wait. I think Nevada actually votes first this year. For the Democrats, I think Nevada goes before South Carolina, if I remember correctly. I think for the Republicans, didn't Nevada come after? Of course, they're suspending their caucuses and primaries because Trump is already the nominee, but that's a different video entirely. Biden must be a little bit concerned, but again, keeping in mind, oftentimes Iowa is not won by the person who ends up nominated. Over, I think, how many election cycles for both parties did they say that had held true? Something like for 10 cycles, there had only been a couple of times where that wasn't the case, I think, or something like that. Or was it the person who won New Hampshire and South Carolina went on to be nominated? I can't remember exactly what it was. Some sort of campaign lore that dates back to the 60s and 70s. Long time in electoral politics as well. You're talking, certainly pre-internet, you're talking a lot of people have black and white TVs at the time, and you're talking about the same political paradigm, the one that we're just barely breaking up now. That's the other thing. Things are changing within politics. The map is also morphing. Southwest is getting more blue. Rust Belt's swinging back to reddom. Mid-Atlantic is getting a little bit more blue. You might see some reddening up here in parts of New Hampshire, certainly with Maine and New Hampshire. Things are changing. Very exciting times for politics. That's about all. Peace out.